Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. It's been quite a while since I've updated this space here on the Tri-Cove City Trials. The project's going in Prachuap Khiri Khan, Thailand. And this clip was actually recorded a few months back, November 2021. It's already almost February 2022, and so I've been off the radar here. Actually, I'm no longer in Thailand at the moment. I'm in fact in the US. I had to come back for a family emergency, but I won't get into that here. Here you can see a project, the last project I was working on before leaving, which is just like a little shelter, gallery, sala, at the front part of my land here, near where the walk-in gate is, or will be, is in the works. And so just galvanized steel project. As you can see, I'm working on the post. We made the basic, some basic footings. This building structure is approximately 3 by 2 meters, so it's not really meant to be like a hangout structure, but it'll be more kind of like a gallery, what they have at entrances to compounds, where basically you're kind of your first entry into the land as far as walking. It'll be next to the actual carport gate. But anyway, yes, it's about 3 by 2 meters, and I have basically these 3-inch steel, galvanized steel tubes, these square tubes. So they're not too thick. I think it's like 1.4 millimeters. It was cheaper, but galvanized steel, so I don't have to treat them overall for corrosion. But yeah, we made some steel footings, me and my son here, and we made some footings like about probably 70 centimeters into the ground, and reinforced with steel and mesh and of course concrete before I could weld this post up and make sure that everything was plumb and square. And had to weld some metal plates there at not only at the base of the footings, but at the top, where basically the beams, the cross beams will be placed that can support rafter / purlin basic roof setup. And so yeah, a lot of it was just welding and galvanized steel. Like I said, it's very thin galvanized steel, so so it's very easy to blow a hole through it with if you don't got the right settings on your welder. And like as I mentioned in previous updates, this welder is it's a welder generator, and so there's no amp setting per se, so you have to control the amperage or the current through your basic throttle on the 7 horsepower engine here. And so you kind of got to play it by ear and know what you're working with. It's always striking that right balance of having just enough current, short of actually knowing how many amps, or measuring how many amps you're putting into your weld, and knowing the voltage of the welder there. So this particular welder, I'm pretty sure it's putting out about between 40 or 70 volts DC current, DC voltage, and the current is anywhere from 50 amps, depending on the throttle setting, all the way up to 160 amps. And so yeah, it's not really ideal for very, very thin metal, but you can kind of get your setting right and do it. And I've blown a lot of holes in this thin galvanized steel, but pretty much got it. So I'm just working on the posts here, getting the plates that'll support the beams, cross beams, that will ultimately support the rafters, which will also be reinforced with purlins, where the roofing will ultimately go as I progress into this clip here. But yeah, welding, there's a lot of prep work that goes into it, and making sure the surfaces are smooth and clean and free of oil, dust, and paint. And then of course with galvanized steel, or galvanized sprayed or coated steel, you have your setting, so a lot of that just burns off. And so yeah, you got to be careful not to breathe too much of that zinc oxide in, because it'll make you sick. And yeah, it just burns off when you weld it, short of actually grinding it down to the bare metal. So before everybody notices, yeah, I know I'm a bit overweight here, and not really got much to show here being shirtless, but yeah, it is definitely warmer in the tropics, and that good midday sun sometimes is good to soak in, but without getting too much. Anyway, so this part of the clip here, I'm preparing to install the support beams. So I guess this would be for these back southern posts here, these studs. would support the, I guess it would be a ridge beam if it were like an A-frame or something, but it's not an A-frame, it's just a square structure. But this is the higher of the posts or studs here at the south end, which is about 3 meters high, so about 10 feet tall or so. So it'll be the main support one on the south side, the higher side of the sloped pitch roof. And basically this beam here, I guess if it's the ridge beam, sets on the square plates that are welded onto the posts or the studs here. And once it's in place, I'll weld it on. You clamp it down to secure it until you can tack weld it. Also, you can use these, as I'm using on this side here, these welding magnets, which work good as well. Moving along, as you can see, I've got both beams, including the, I guess, ridge beam and top plate up now, and they're welded and tacked already. And so I'm moving on to the rafters, placing those. Well, as you can see, one-man show. Sometimes you got to go up and down the ladder and try to get everything. Also, you know, my the functionality of my left limb is limited from an accident I had some time ago. But yeah, able to get it done. Idea that it would be harder if the pitch was a lot like steeper, but this is not much of a pitch. Like I said, 3 meters is from one side, and the other side is about 2.6, 2.7. But yeah, those welding magnets or any kind of clamping clamps, C-clamps, really help, especially if you're doing this 1 or 2 persons, to get everything kind of in place, hold in place, just long enough and secure enough so you can tack weld it. Once it's tack welded, and you know, you're sure about your leveling and all that, you can definitely come back and weld it properly, which is what I do. But yeah, up and down the ladder sometimes, trying to get it perfectly, and then, you know, obviously one person has to go to each side and reset up the ladder and make sure it's all good. And then once you're sure it's in place, in this case this first rafter here, then I get the welding ready, welding prep, and we just get on to tack it in place before we reinforce it with proper welds with the joints that it'll hold on. Of course, you can use screws and bolts for all this stuff. I just, you know, once you get into welding, there's no point in doing the screws and bolts unless you have a specific purpose for doing that. But a lot of people who don't know how to weld or are not quite there yet will prefer to, you know, just drill a big old hole, put some bolts and washers. But welding does fine if you know what you're doing here. So yeah, these next several sequences are just me basically welding sped up. You could probably hear the sound of that generator, how it goes in and out to deliver the weld there. But yeah, welding for me, especially during this project here, I'll explain a little bit. So yeah, my sister, same mother, same father, older senior of 3 years in the U.S., had passed away mysteriously, and I won't get into too many details about that. But I had just learned about this, and so was in a transition about, you know, we had been contemplating about coming back before she had passed away, and I was going to live with her. And this had been going on for occupying my headspace for the better part of, you know, a decade, about moving back to the U.S. with the family, and we had basically decided that we weren't going to go. It had too much going on that kept me in Thailand, and of course I didn't expect my sister to pass away, and so had to go, you know, back to the U.S. for this reason, and so had to put everything on hold in Thailand. But anyway, during this period I had just found out and was in the plans for coming back, and so welding was really something that could occupy my headspace and keep me focused and not hurting too much, because it was a big shocking experiment. So anyway, moving on here to these next clips, you can see I've got 4 rafters welded and installed onto the beams here, and those will be supporting purlins, and I'm basically using also galvanized rectangular tubing, and it's, you know, 1.4 1.6 millimeters thickness of the tubing, the actual steel. And basically I use these 2x1, I believe they might be 3x1 now, I think they're 2x1 tubes there for both the rafters, and of course the rafters are placed upright for maximum tensile strength, and the purlins, they're placed flat on top of the rafters, and that way I can attach the roofing material, which will be a zinc material, directly to the purlins and not to the rafters. And so yeah, just spacing out the rafters enough so I can have enough room to install the purlins with just basic screws. But yeah, like I said, one-man show. You got to move the ladder around a lot, and you got to lift things up and get it in place, but it's good exercise. And as you can see, I got all the purlins here that I'm going to be using for this roof installed on top of the rafters. And yeah, it's just with the welding, you got to have your negative lead here, as long as it's conducting to the metal you're welding. There you go, wind blowing. And here's the zinc roofing material that I'll be using. Zinc sheets like this are used throughout Asia for siding, for roofs, for temporary. They're good because, like, yeah, zinc is an anti-corrosive material, so it's good for, yeah, it's good. It works. It's very lightweight too. It works for roofs, siding, whatever. It kind of has that like labor camp construction feel when you use it for sidings, but it does the trick. And it's not too expensive as well compared to like metal sheet even, or other types of painted steel or ceramic. Ceramic is very heavy. So for this roof, like I said, I'm only using 2x1 tubes for the purlins and rafters. And so if I were to do a weight bearing one, I'd probably use thicker and more the grid I'd use definitely more rafters and purlins, but this all this is supporting this roof. It should be more than enough. And basically we're using rubber washers with steels that can be drilled directly into the purlins. But here I'm gesturing. Basically, you want to make sure when you're doing panel by panel, you don't screw the last panel in, because you're going to overlay your second panel over there, and basically the second panel will be screwed through two sheets. So yeah, so I just do it all except for the final one, and alternate on the actual grooves. And you obviously remember to, when you do this, you got to screw on the bulge groove, not in the actual gully or valley, because obviously the water flows down there, and if you drill holes, then you can create leakage problems. But if you do it on the elevated groove, then of course the water through gravity will just fall into the pitch and go down the roof. And so yeah, I do is panel by panel. And also zinc is easy to cut. You can literally cut it with a grinder, with a cutting wheel. You can do it with snipping tools as well. So you do it panel by panel here, and as you can see, it's taking shape slowly here. And yeah, it's a good little project here just to get going. Here's the actual zinc sheeting. I think it worked out to something like the 300 baht per panel for 8-foot panel. So that's like yeah, not a lot, $10. So yeah, you can do a whole entire roof for pennies with this stuff in Asia. But like I said, it's not for weight bearing purposes, and there's going to be no insulation, but it just provides a little bit of a shade, this type of shelter in the front here, and I can connect to it and extend and add some siding, and when I get a proper gate, a walk-in gate, it'll be a nice little gallery, or even like a little even a guard post, right at the walk-in gate area. And but yeah, when I was doing this, local guy came over. I thought I was building a house. He was like, "Why are you building it so small?" I'm like, no, it's not a house, it's just a basic structure that'll serve as a gallery. But yeah, so anyway, when you do this, obviously the initial 8-foot panel wasn't enough to cover the entire length of this, about 3 meters with an overhang there. So you just do your second panel, but you got to make sure you don't screw where you're going to in the first panel. So you need to have basically your screws go through both panels, or all 3 panels in some joint areas. So just about getting that right. And of course you got to get they make roofing screws specific, like that usually use these block bolt tightening mechanism, but I just use regular screws with rubber washers. And the rubber washer obviously is to help secure and seal your panel onto your purlin in this case, and really tight, and of course waterproof it. So yeah, pretty basic setup, but yeah, you need a lot more screws than you think. Some people think you just put a few screws here or there, but when you get the elements, the rain and the water, especially with this lightweight paneling material, this zinc paneling, that it can easily blow off and flare through the air. Yeah, this is and also the other thing you gotta keep in mind is your ladder you know, how high is your ladder, how high you need to go, because a lot of roofers, they work on their roofs, so they got to have a strong structural setup that they're and agile. And of course in Asia a lot of people are small and they're able to, you know, be Spider-Man on the roof, but I'm not really confident climbing around on this structure, especially it's not really weight bearing. It probably hold me, but you know, it's very dangerous. And here's my son here, he's also helping me here finalize the paneling. And but yeah, just the basic ladder. And so I've got a steel ladder there that can it's easy for me to work up to 3 meters. But of course the higher you go, the more in structures you're working with, you'll definitely need to use scaffolding of some sort, not just ladders. But this is just our little pilot project here. In the future, if we were to do some more structural work, you definitely require a nice scaffolding with platform that you can easily work on at elevated, you know, elevations of 2, 3, 4, 5 meters, and without compromising your safety. But that's it for now, folks. Look forward to our next update eventually here. Bye.